Hello everybody, it's Chris here from the NerdSon channel, and today I'm going to be talking about some homebrew stuff. I'm wearing my coat because it's about 4 degrees down here, but that should be okay. Hopefully it won't crinkle around too much. I picked my quietest coat. I saw a video recently from a channel XP to level 3, which if you're here, you've probably heard of them because you're looking for D&D things, and they're pretty good at D&D things. I saw a clip from XP to level 3 where they explained their homebrew rules that they use in 5th edition D&D, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to do the same thing but with Pathfinder. A lot of these rules that I get from forums or just talking with the other people at my table, and some of them might be the same as the ones that are in the XP to level 3 video. I don't recall all of them off the top of my head. It's been a little while since I've seen it. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is one that my party and I have been using for quite a long time, actually, and that is cure spells are maximized outside of combat. So that's going to be cure light wounds, cure moderate, light, moderate, serious critical, maybe? Cure spells are maximized when you're not in combat. So basically what that means is if you're not in a combat situation and you cast cure light wounds, they get the maximum healing that you can offer. We figured because out of combat you have a little bit more time to take to concentrate on the spell, and it would make more sense that you could get some more healing out of it. Now, some people like to apply this to potions and other items as well. I personally don't, and I really don't apply it to any spells outside of the cure category. But of course, feel free to edit the rule to your liking to see what fits best at your table. The next tip is that your backstory can alter your class skills. If you are a race... So, for example, if you're the race a Kasatha, I believe it's pronounced, the four-armed desert folk, it wouldn't make any sense that your class skills include swim. We usually go ahead and make characters beforehand. We don't actually do a session 0 very often, although I know a lot of people do, and that's simply because we meet very often. Just talk to your GM and see if this could be an option for your table. The fact that some characters, some of the class skills just don't really make any sense. The third rule is that quick draw works on unattended items in your square. If you have a weapon lying on the ground, or even an item lying on the ground or on a table that you're right next to or standing on top of, if you have quick draw, you can grab it as a free action. Now, if an enemy is within your range, they can also try and grab it using usually I use a reflex saving throw, but some people like to use acrobatics or a simple dexterity check, whatever works for you, or they can attack of opportunity you. However, I also include in this rule that the enemy can't try and grab it and attack you. They only get to pick one or the other. Oh, Plane Shift. Plane Shift. So Plane Shift is a spell that allows you to, well, shift planes. Obviously. And depending on your setting and what gods you use, if you use the base ones or if you have a homebrew set, depending on what planes of existence you use, this might not be a good idea. Plane shift just doesn't tend to work very often because you might go to hell. So having plane shift where you can just pop into another plane whenever you want could be extremely dangerous and very taxing for the DM. So you just got to talk about it with the DM first. Maybe at higher levels it can make a little bit more sense, but especially some of the templates or the classes that eventually get it, it's a little shifty. Next, me. On a full rest, you heal your Constitution modifier +1 per level. So I might throw the math over here on the green screen, back over here, but in case I don't, it's going to be, if your Constitution modifier is, say, 2, and then your level is 10, you're going to do 2 + 1 plus your level, and that's how much you heal during a full night's rest. So the next one is counterspells. Without the use of improved counterspell or specific spells like Dispel Magic, we allow counterspelling with the spell's direct opposite. So the easiest example is Cure Light Wounds and Inflict Light Wounds, but another good example would be True Strike and Bungle. I've seen some people use Fireball and, is it Ice Ball? Snowball? I think it's Snowball. To counter the spell, you still have to prepare it the same way. It's still done mostly the same way. However, you're just using an opposing spell to counter that, outside of the rules of improved counterspell, of course. So this next rule that we implemented at our table a long time ago mainly works for us because we have a lot of people that like to play rogues or dex fighters or dex barbarians or dex anything, and that is that weapon finesse, the feat that allows you to exchange the accuracy from strength to dexterity with light weapons and other proficient certain weapons. We allow that to apply to damage as well. The reason for this is because, like I said, we have a lot of dex fighters and rogues, and it tends to work out pretty well for balancing. I've had a lot of people, when I tell them that, say, ooh, that's weird, that shouldn't be a thing. But honestly, it works really well, and I don't see why it's too much of an issue to implement into your game. It basically allows rogues, dex fighters, dex barbarians to function a little bit better without having to rely on dex and strength both being fairly high scores. So this next one is a pretty nice one for casters. A lot of the issue that casters have to deal with outside of being a massive glass cannon is that casting either provokes attacks of opportunity or is extremely difficult when it doesn't. So one thing that we've allowed for a little bit more up close and personal combat is that touch spells can be cast before you use them when you're away from an enemy, and then you can move up to the enemy and touch them with said spell. This allows for casters to be more functional in up close and personal combat, and a lot of people say that they're not supposed to be, but I think especially if you're running a smaller game, that can be extremely helpful to the casters in your party. And I promise you, all of them will love it, even the rules lawyers, because it saves their lives so many times. This next rule is one that we implemented a while ago. I can't remember exactly why we did it. I think it was just simply because we thought it was a strange rule. We don't roll to confirm critical hits. So if you roll within your weapon's critical threshold, say usually for short swords it's 19-20, for most other weapons it's going to be the natural 20, which then applies your crit modifier. We don't do the reroll to confirm crits. We simply say that if you roll into your crit threshold, you've made a critical hit. Now, one question that you might have is, then what does critical focus do? We basically just remove critical focus as a feat, because without the need to confirm critical hits, you don't really need it. And this rule, like many others, which I forgot to include this disclaimer, this rule applies to party members and enemies. So all of these rules apply to everyone. The cure spells, the rolling to confirm, the dex modifier, all of it. Every single rule. That makes it balanced across the board. One thing that you shouldn't do, a little extra tip for you, is that you shouldn't apply a rule to players and not NPCs, or the other way around, with the exception of bosses. Usually with bosses, especially like the big final BBEG, meant to kick the party's butt level bosses, you can bend the rules a little bit with them if you want, usually adding things like boss actions or legendary actions, maybe giving them a class feature that doesn't exist, but creating a simple homebrew run really fast to increase their damage or their accuracy. So the last homebrew rule that we use is one that XP to level 3, I remember, does use this, and it's very ironic, is we use milestones. I personally don't like using the XP system. I much prefer milestones, especially with the full homebrew settings that we have. It's very easy to use milestones. However, I understand completely when a lot of tables will use XP as a leveling system. The last rule that I wanted to mention, I think I said before this that the last rule was going to be the last rule, but one that I forgot, I actually don't have it on my definitely not a script card, is that we use the website D20PFSRD as a resource and a guide for a lot of what we do in Pathfinder. Now, don't take that as we don't buy the books, because we do. Our main GM, Brandon, you've seen him in the sword videos and I think a couple more. He has every Pathfinder book that's out. I have the pocket editions of almost every Pathfinder book that's out, and Tyler has bought all of them in PDF format. So don't worry, we still support the game and we still support Paizo very much. We just find D20 to be a quick and easy resource to use, especially when you're trying to run an entire campaign and you need to look something up very quickly and you don't have every section of the book memorized. We say that if it's on D20, it's allowed for the most part. There's a lot of third-party publishing options on D20, and there's also a lot of expansions that we might not really use. For example, I know in Brandon and Tyler's campaigns, we've used the Mythic expansion, but in mine we don't. Things like that you usually just want to discuss with everyone at the table, especially with the GM, but other than that, if it's on D20, it's allowed. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this small list of Pathfinder homebrew rules that you might want to apply into your sessions. If you're a player, just show your GMs this video, please. I'll also leave a link to a Google Doc that I have all of them listed in the description if you'd rather just show that to them, and see if you can apply this to your table. If you find anything that doesn't work, or maybe you have some tweaks, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Anyways, guys, I'll check you later. Peace.